Every year on the same date, sometime between late morning and early afternoon, she would sit at the kitchen table when the house was finally quiet, when her husband had left for work and her daughter was at school, and take out a single sheet of paper from a cream-colored box hidden at the back of the drawer. There was nothing dramatic about the ritual, no candlelight, no trembling hands. Just a pen, the sound of a teacup settling on its saucer, and a woman who, for that one day, allowed herself to step slightly sideways in time. The letters were always dated. Never more than a page. She would begin simply, often with "I thought of you again today." Sometimes she wrote about the weather. Sometimes about the house. Sometimes about how the trees looked in the park where they had once sat in silence for what felt like a lifetime. And sometimes she wrote about nothing at all, only how she had woken up with the ache of his name in her throat, though she hadn't said it aloud in over a decade. Her husband didn't know. Not because she hid something shameful, but because there are parts of a person that no marriage ever fully reaches. Not even a good one. Especially not a good one. He was kind. Present. Gentle in the ways that matter on difficult days. He asked how she slept. He remembered which tea calmed her migraines. He kissed her forehead without asking for anything. And she loved him, in the way that one learns to love the life that allowed her to stop surviving and start living. But he was not the boy on the train. Not the boy she met when she was 19 and still believed that every small look had meaning, that certain hands were made for hers, that time wasn't something you could waste with the wrong person. That boy had shown up in her life like thunder, sudden, electric, and gone before the sky cleared. It hadn't ended tragically. There had been no betrayal, no fight, no cruel word. Just separation. Two lives pulling gently but persistently in opposite directions. He had been offered something abroad. She had responsibilities at home. Neither asked the other to stay. Neither begged. That, perhaps, had been the truest sign that it was love, and not fear, between them. But she had never forgotten. Not really. Years passed. She married someone else. Had a daughter. Built a quiet life filled with patterns and music and dinners on Fridays. But the boy, now a man somewhere, had remained a thread woven tightly into the lining of her. Each year, on his birthday, she wrote. She never mailed them. She never tried to find him. Not on purpose. Not through friends or social media or old contacts. Part of her feared he had forgotten. A deeper part feared he hadn't, and was living a life where remembering her would hurt. So she wrote. One letter a year. Folded carefully. Slipped into the same envelope without an address. Tucked into the same drawer. Sometimes she reread them years later, surprised at how honest she'd been with herself only on paper. But this year, something felt different. As she sat with her tea, pen in hand, and date at the top of the page, her hand hesitated. Not because there was nothing to say. But because, for the first time in years, she wasn't sure she should write it. Because yesterday, by absolute chance, she had seen his name. Printed neatly in the corner of a charity newsletter that came in the mail. A small donor acknowledgement. Name. Country. Nothing more. But it was him. She knew. And now, the silence was broken, not by him, but by the world. And she didn't know what that meant. Not yet. The letter remained blank that morning. She sat with the pen resting in her fingers, unmoving, as the steam from her tea curled upward and vanished. Her husband's coat still hung near the door, her daughter's empty cereal bowl sat in the sink. The house was alive with routine. But she sat very still, as if any movement might disturb a thread too delicate to touch. Seeing his name on that newsletter should have meant nothing. It wasn't addressed to her, wasn't personal. Just a brief line in a long list of donors. But the moment her eyes landed on it, she knew. Not in the rational way, but in the body, in the tightening of her breath, in the way her fingers gripped the paper a second too long. She didn't tell anyone. Not her friend from work who always asked if she was doing okay, not her husband, not even her journal. For the rest of that day, she went through the motions, made dinner, laughed at her daughter's story from school, responded to emails. But underneath it all, a quiet pulse had begun, a rhythm that had been absent for years. Not the beat of longing. Something slower. Older. Like recognition. That night, when the house had gone still again, she opened the drawer. There were 16 letters. "16 birthdays. "16 years of quiet monologues she'd never intended anyone to read. She didn't read them.